Well, I entitled this sermon First Aid because recently I was thinking about some events when my children were young. As I'm thinking about Sunday school today, we're thinking about children on our mind, and of course me, I immediately think of the emergencies. Like I remember the time that Tyler, my son, he was at the table with us. He was just a toddler at the time. And invariably, any of you that have had small children know that they don't come with instructions. And they never give you a fair warning on when they're going to get themselves into some kind of trouble. I don't remember exactly what food it was, but, it was at that stage in which kids kind of shovel it in. You know what I mean? And he must have shoveled it in too quickly because then he started turning a little blue and he was choking. And of course, I did what any father does who loves their child. I said, Teresa, do something. and that's exactly, thank God she was there. Yeah, you know what? I did an amazing thing when I married that woman. I saved the life of my son. Because she picked him up right away from his little stool there and turned him upside down, She knew exactly what to do. I don't know where she learned this. I certainly didn't know what to do at that time other than to panic. I was there holding the phone, ready to dial 911. And quickly enough, she was able to dislodge that object, and my son took a nice big breath. And I was absolutely relieved. Any of you ever experienced something like that? You see, it's a children problem, isn't it? They're always choking on stuff. Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one that's experienced a time of emergency, of the need for some kind of first aid, right? That we have to jump into action right away to hopefully save a life. Remember another time, my daughter Cameron was a little bit older. She was just washing the dishes. I don't know what she was doing. She's always been the clumsiest child. She really has, I mean, if anyone could find some new way to have an emergency, it would be my daughter Cameron. She was just washing the dishes, and somehow a knife slipped out or something and cut across her wrist. That's not a good place to get a cut. There was a lot of blood, if I recall, before I almost passed out. Once again, I did what any good father would do. I said, Teresa, what do we do? She quickly grabbed a towel. She immediately started placing a kind of haphazard bandage around it and said, you stay here. I'm taking her to the urgent care. And that was good because I would have been no help whatsoever. Any of you like me in which you just kind of panic? You're the kind of guy or gal that just kind of cries and is like, oh my gosh, someone else deal with this? I hate to admit it, but yeah, first aid is just, maybe that's why they only allow dead people to really be with me in times of need. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm quite good with people that are dying, but they tend to keep me away from the live patients. Well, anyway, it's just this thought that there are so many people out there ready to give first aid. It's that immediate response that all of us need. When we are experiencing a time of emergency and of suffering, we want people who have that kind of skill, that kind of quiet reassurance. When I had one episode not too long ago, I remember some of the nurses and the others, they were all so calm, which made me feel calm, right? At peace. That's what we need in times of emergency, and along with the skill and along with the know-how. But why is it, I was thinking this Sunday, why is it that our moral and spiritual needs are not elevated to the same level of immediate reaction and prompt response? People don't just jump out of their seats and say, oh my goodness, did you see Charles and the sin that he just committed? Let's attend to him right now, Before he commits adultery, let's save him from this sin. We usually don't do that, right? We usually tell ourselves, that's none of my business. I need not say anything. Oh, she doesn't know. Am I right?
Yes.
How many times do we not respond? We do not push back. We do not call our brothers and our sisters accountable for some of their moral lapses and their spiritual needs. We do not elevate it to the same kind of immediate reaction and prompt response that is required. And there are so many headlines today in which it seems to me there is not that immediate jump to action. Famine in Gaza. You know, if you just walked around today in the streets, most of us Americans don't seem to notice. Don't seem to really care, I would say. It's not always number one. The war in Ukraine continues to go on. We're hearing a lot of good stuff, with a lot of good talk, but the actions certainly are not showing us that this war is anywhere near resolution. People are not lining up in the streets and demanding that it end. They're the unhoused. Yeah, there's some folks who are trying to put them someplace else, but is it really a big mindset to help these folks? Loneliness continues to grip so many millions and millions of Americans that the drug industry is having a heyday at selling us prescription medications for anxiety. Am I right? And there's addictions. And then there's just the good old, other crises, right? Someone you know is going through a divorce. Someone you know is losing a job. Someone is lying. Someone is cheating. Someone is taking advantage of the elderly. Someone is mistreating and abusing our children. Sometimes I wonder as I look at this world, do you wonder too? Why are we not more excited into immediate response to these crises? Is it that we don't have the time or the energy? I mean, that's part of it, right? Is it because there are just so many, we're just so overwhelmed? Well, anyway, maybe this text has something to teach us about these needs and about the responses. Now we have this poor woman that Don was talking about, all bent over. Now she was likely a very well-known person in her little village. Most villages back then were really small. I think you'll like this because the last time I checked, High Ridge doesn't have any population listed on the signs. That's usually an indication that too small to really put it up there, right? Well, that's the way it was in the ancient world. Most of the little villages, they had those signs. They knew where these places were, but not many people lived there. And if you did, most of them were just a few last names. You know what I mean? They most likely knew this person very well. They knew how long she had been like this. They knew everything about her background, whose family she was involved with, everything. And it seems that the text tells us no one could explain medically why she was bent over. Yes, medicine had not progressed to where it is today, but the medicine they did have was not able to do anything for her. She was left to misery because no one knew what a cure would be. Even some scholars have suggested this rather vague understanding of her being bent over all the time maybe points to a psychological cause. Many people are sort of bent over. Maybe it's just a description. Maybe it's not necessarily. But sometimes you know how if you think and if you're overpowered by something, it turns the body itself all twisted, right? I mean, any of you that suffered from depression or anxiety or some of these other things, do you not walk with a limp? Do you not walk kind of twisted up inside, your stomach always rumbling, your mind always thinking and stirring, sleepless most nights? Psychological causes often manifest themselves in various physical ways. Maybe that's what was going on here. And then, do we need to say that every Sunday morning when we gather here today, we consciously block this out, but you realize the odds are pretty great that someone here is being physically abused. Someone here is being mentally abused. Someone here is being treated in an ungodly way by a spouse, by a parent, by an uncle or an aunt, by grandparents. The amount of sin in this room is disturbing, isn't it? Yes. I know we don't want to talk about that because we got all dressed up today to hide some of that stuff. But it's always among us in every community of people. Now, in this text, there's also this power struggle going on. Besides this woman that we are introduced, we're also introduced to the synagogue president. They've got their own Esther. Oh gosh, don't read into this too much, Esther. Okay. There was a power struggle though with this particular president. This one was not as kind and benevolent as the one that we have. This one was thinking about, I'm in charge, and I create the rules. I set the standards, and everyone needs to go through me, right? Because I'm the president before we do things. We're used to this, aren't we? We're used to that. Most of your jobs, you don't just start doing something without asking your manager if it's okay to do that kind of work, if you think it needs to be done. Am I right? There is a pecking order. There's a line of folks you have to clear things through. That's the way this world works. There's the synagogue president. And then there's Jesus. Jesus sees a woman in pain. What does he do? He doesn't fill out the card. Prayer card, right? I got one right here. He doesn't fill out the prayer card and say, hey, synagogue president, we need to pray for this woman today. And then maybe we can make some arrangements. Maybe she needs a casserole or two. Maybe she needs to find a better hospital to go to. Maybe we need some kind of guidance from you and others in the community to get some help for this woman. See, the synagogue president would have been A-okay with that. Because it still leaves him, it would have been a him, sorry, in charge. Jesus doesn't ask permission. You ever notice that in almost every story, Jesus doesn't ask permission for stuff? I wish I could be that bold. Of course, then you'd be crucifying me at age 30. Jesus doesn't ask permission. He just says a word, and then he touches the woman, and guess what? She's healed. And of course, then, you notice, this makes somebody very ticked off. And that's the synagogue president, because it's not in the bylaws. No one asked this person. There was no phone call. There was no, hey, can I get with you for a minute? You want to lay on hands when I lay on hands? You want to have a small action in this? Would you mind if we did this together? No. Clearly, Jesus is upstaging this outstanding synagogue president. Now, I know you're a very loving congregation, but if someone came in here and upstaged good old Esther, wouldn't we be upset about it? She volunteered, for goodness sakes. She's put a lot of work and effort in the stuff. And this Jesus, to have the audacity to come on in and do as he wishes? So the synagogue president, certainly not an Esther, This synagogue president lets his anger show. This is the Sabbath. It's against the rules. We only heal during the week. There's no need to work on the Sabbath. In fact, the law says specifically in this bylaw, number 1.82, page 133. I just made that stuff up. It says clearly here that you're not to do it. Come back Monday. Make an appointment. Gosh, I do that a lot. You reach me at the end of the thing and the service, and I'm tired, and you say, could we have a few minutes? And I say something like, could you make an appointment? Could you call me? Let me write this down. Anyway, the anger shows from the synagogue president, and then Jesus. Jesus then, not like somebody trying to save face or trying to let this guy feel a little bit better, is in recognition of the person who was suffering. I'm sorry, your feelings got a little hurt. You're the synagogue president. This lady over here was bent over 18 years. She's been coming 18 years. I didn't even see any of you give her a pillow. I didn't see any of you lift her name up in prayer anymore because there's always a need for prayer for this person. Let's just take them off the list. I mean, let's face it, that's what we have to do. We got this little bitty bulletin, you know. We don't want to have somebody's name on there for 18 years. And Jesus seems to be saying, look, there's a double standard here. You know, we lift up the prayer cards of those that we love. We have another pile in which we're like, we're bored to death of these concerns oh, there she goes again, lifting her hand. She's got another prayer request. Do you know the type of person we're talking about? There's always a need. It's amazing, isn't it? How we do that gymnastically. And then we no longer think about that person. We no longer think about the needs that they're lifting up. We've gotten bored of these folks. I think that this 18-year-old woman, I don't know how old she was. Maybe it was her whole lifetime that she's been bent over. Maybe it's a large portion, 18 years, pretty large portion, either way you go. You do one thing yourself, and yet you want to stop him from doing something which is no different. Take, for example, these animals of yours. I know where you live. I know you got a farm. Don't you give your puppies some water? Any of you pet lovers? I bet you're going to go home today and that cat's going to eat better than some people do. Don't tell me it's wrong. You're going to make that chicken salad and you're going to feed some to it. That dog's going to eat pretty good tonight, right? If you're out of food, you're going to go down to the store and you're going to feed it. You're not going to say, oh, this is work. I'm not going to feed these animals it's a Sabbath day. Just have to starve for a day. No. If you see that animal after church all tied up or put in the kennel, are you going to say, well, sorry, you're going to have to stay there? Or are you going to let it out so it can love on you and lick on you and all that kind of stuff? Yeah, you would unlock that, unbind them, and now compare that to an actual person. She is a daughter of Abraham. In other words, she's one of us. She's family. Family in terms of the nation state. She's an Israelite. She's one of us. Be like coming to church and saying, you know what, we're just not going to love that person as much as we love this person because of the color of their skin or because of what they do for a living. Jesus says, that doesn't sound right to me. If we're all part of one nation, aren't we supposed to love everyone? And then I've already told you that I believe God's love is not just for this nation, but this nation is to be a light to the other nations. And so if you can't do it among your own, like if you're Americans, for example, and you don't love the unhoused, and you don't love the folks with medical conditions here, then how on earth is there any hope for all these other nations where they have equal problems, if not worse? When are you going to unbind people and let them go? Satan here is powerful. Now, I don't make much of the word Satan. I don't see a guy dressed up in red with a pitchfork, okay? I think that's rather comical. But evil does exist, doesn't it? Wickedness exists. Far too often I find that it resides not in the little guy dressed in red, but daggone it, right in there. That's the bad thing. When Satan is right in there. She is the daughter of Abraham, tied for 18 years. She symbolizes then, folks, the entire nation of Israel, bound by evil. Here Jesus has won an initial victory, right? She's no longer bent over. She's walking straight. Hey, that reminds me. Remember when Jesus was coming, his advent, right? He's going to be born. And what did good old prophet Isaiah say? Make straight the paths. Make straight the paths of Christ. Is this not Jesus who makes people straight? Not bent over, not harmed, not consumed, not somehow devastated by whatever evil they may have suffered psychologically or physically or mentally. It's an initial victory, or as I like to call it, a mustard seed victory. I mean, it's just one person in one little synagogue in a little village that we're talking about today, right? Doesn't sound like all that much. Probably never made the headlines in Jerusalem, right? But so much of Jesus is like that, isn't it? Mustard seed little events. Now here's the weird thing. We're all reading about it today, though, aren't we? In every church across the planet, we're reading about this woman made straight. Just a little insignificant synagogue, an insignificant woman. Don't get on me for that. That's how they thought in the ancient world. Israel insisted at this time period on its tight boundaries. That's how you keep things in place, right? Can't let those Samaritans in here. Can't let those foreigners in here. Rigid application of the Sabbath law. We gotta know about law and order, and there's got to be things you just can't get away with in church. I mean, I wouldn't want Joe to just pop up and say, I'll take over the sermon now. We got to have order. And yet, in all of this, we find that we are preventing Jesus from doing his work. We are preventing Jesus from doing his work. Did you ever stop and think about that? Before, you step on somebody's good idea. We tried that once. Stomp. Push it in there a little bit. No, we don't need to do that. We did that back in 1968. Don't need to do that. Unless Israel lets Jesus do its work, there seems to be no hope. Make sense? If Jesus doesn't do the work, who's going to do it? It ain't going to get done. There's no hope. Where is the good news in this text, friends? Maybe it's this. There's still time because you're listening to the story. There's still time to let Jesus act for us. Still time to get out of Jesus' way and allow Jesus to do his miracles. One action in one synagogue on one Sabbath. What can this possibly achieve, you are thinking? But when Jesus sows the seed of the kingdom, nobody knows what the ultimate result will be. Every time you break the satanic chains that have tied people up, another victory is won, which will go on having repercussions. This is the mustard seed faith that runs our Sunday school. Yeah, we had a few more up here, but I'm sure someone in the audience today on Facebook or in the back pews going, nah, I've seen other churches with more. Right? What does this little bitty church think of this? This is hardly enough. No one's going to be coming to this church asking for its opinion on world affairs. Come on, get with it. But if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you might have seen what I saw. We may be preparing the religious values of the next president. Did you ever stop and think of that? We might be instilling the values of a future CEO, a scientist or an engineer, or just some good old teachers in our public schools. And those small acts could tip the balance in favor of Jesus' kingdom. Right? You ever stop to think that we are in a time in which there's a kind of war against the satanic powers of this age? And these are our weapons? Our Sunday school books, our curriculum, our prayers, our lives. You and I may see only small mustard seeds and think that this is not very revolutionary. Almost every church has a Sunday school, for example, a youth program, for goodness sakes. But this is how the Christ chooses to claim victory. One life at a time. One soul at a time. One child, one adult, one seemingly insignificant action at a time. But a mustard seed from God can foil the devil. Don't you forget that. There is hope if you remember the mustard seed. Christ shall win this battle, is what this text is telling us. Christ, in fact, has already won by his resurrection and the life everlasting, because we know how the story ends, you and I. Now we're back to where we started, right? Why isn't there that immediate reaction from all of us? When we see someone hungry, we stop and feed them. We see someone unhoused, we get together and we build a shelter. Why is it that we see folks at war and we do not demonstrate for peace? Why is it we see demands for justice and we're not so interested in making sure that they're truly innocent anymore? I don't have a good response to this because, like I told you at the very beginning, in a crisis, don't look at me. I might turn you on your head and I might call 911, but we're leaving it to chance. So I think I would rather leave it in God's hands and Jesus Christ's hands, don't you think? And maybe we better get with it. Because Christ seems to be calling us as first responders for first aid to a world in a moral, ethical, religious crisis. Amen. Let's stand and sing our closing hymn today. Oh, wait. Let's still stand. Let's do the Apostles' Creed, and then we'll sing. It's found on the back cover of our hymnal. I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth,